And welcome back to Geek Life. We are going into our deep dive now, and tonight we got a very special topic. If you're a Hollywood producer with 3 yachts and truckloads of unspent Batman money, you may think the end times have finally come. For the rest of us, this seems a bit odd because we've been living in the apocalypse since March, and while it is at one of its worst points, um, while it's by far at one of its worst points, the let them eat cake attitude of the Christopher Nolans of the world have never been more apparent. COVID has shaken the world and shaken the bourgeoisie in a very different way. Tonight, we are bringing out the guillotine and dissecting the issue headfirst. Tonight, we want to explore what happens to the rich when the world gets shaken, and how our favorite icons play by a very different set of rules than the rest of us. To start us off, Christopher Nolan ripped into HBO Max. We talked about this earlier in the show, saying that many famous filmmakers went to bed working for the greatest film studio on the planet to wake up finding themselves working for the world's worst streaming service. Braun, is he right? Does HBO deserve that kind of hate?
I have never heard HBO referred to as the world's worst streaming service. Get off your high horse. I understand that you had the intention of producing films for this big screen and for these fancy releases and big audiences and box office numbers, but come on, the world needs to adapt, and HBO, from their original content to the curated content that they purchase, has always been top notch. I think that it's a little bit of an overreaction.
Little bit. Kev, you feel the same?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just, like you said, just rich people having their pockets hurt a little bit, or maybe not even, I don't know. No one likes the status quo or to change the status quo, especially when it's going good for you, because, the future is uncertain, so.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I mean, for the average moviegoer, the HBO Max move is a win. Right. Does this victory for moviegoers outweigh the cost to film producers? And if this trajectory continues, what will happen with film producers?
Yeah. So I think it's just going to have to be a shift. I think, much like, and I'll get into this again later, I'll use as another reference, much like how the music industry had to sort of shift and readjust itself to just, the prevalence of the internet. I think producers, in a way, are going to have to figure out a way to, I guess, maximize the majority of the resources in which they can use is, still deliver stellar products and intellectual properties. I think in a way, there's going to be some sort of price modeling change. For instance, like they could do a thing where what Disney was doing, a movie would come straight to HBO Max and it's $30 to watch it, opening day or whatever. But I think this just seems like the tides are shifting in a way where, like we talked about before, but yes, sure, the pandemic really killed the movie theater, but it had been dying for a while. Like, not that many people were going to the movie theaters anymore.
Yeah, this is true. But Braun, you're in and out of the film industry. I mean, you've been working and you're in the middle of this right now. How have you felt anything with this big HBO Max as far as the shift in the kind of attitudes in the film industry?
Not like a specific shift with this story, but I'm just thinking of kind of how productions will change, because not only are they anticipated to be making less with the release of these movies on streaming sites, but having COVID added to the budgets is ridiculous. People are spending so much more money to produce to produce films. It's exorbitant. And not only are they spending all this money for the COVID compliance officers that need to be present on site, to the nurses testing every other day, every crew member. There's also the extra time that you have to take breaks every so often to disinfect the entire studio. It adds time, it adds money. And then to see this happening, well, then your movie might not make X amount of money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think there really needs to be a shift, smaller production, smaller crews, different, maybe indie movies will come to the rise. Maybe things like animation will come to the rise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that the animation is a good point there. I think that's something you probably could do mostly from home. From what I understand, I'm not someone that works in the animation industry, so I can't say that for sure.
Yeah.
The kind of question I guess that begs to ask then, would it be better for everybody involved, for viewers and producers, if we just waited to revitalize the entertainment industry after COVID is over? Or is that asking too much of fans and franchises to keep everything on hold?
I think it's asking a lot for both parties, for like the people consuming it and also the people making it. Like that's their livelihood. Those are their jobs. Like,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of what like the talk is on set. It's like follow these guidelines, do what you're supposed to do, like take this seriously, because if we take all these guidelines seriously, that's protecting our jobs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
For real, Kev, do you feel the same?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit unrealistic. I mean, it's unrealistic in the sense of twofold, where it's like, there is a pandemic still happening, but at the same time, the show must go on, as you would say. I think there still is a demand for it too, right? Like people still want to be entertained. They want to watch their favorite shows, their favorite movies and stuff. So I think as long as there's still an audience or a market for it, then they're still going to keep producing it regardless of how they got to release it.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, we've been figuring out ways to make content
Yeah.
completely digitally, but ours is a very different format, and ours is something that we can do just over video call. We actually made it that way, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But I don't know. One of the most let them eat cake-esque stories from this week has to be Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins making away with record deals from the WB. They're still going to make their cash regardless of their success here. Yet they, yes, they were really unlucky with their release timing, but millions of people have lost their jobs and essentially been told tough shit. Is given the situation that we're all in with this pandemic, is that situation fair for Patty Jenkins and Wonder Woman to still, make just as much as if the movie was still successful?
No, I don't think it's ever fair, right? But that's just the way our society works. Unfortunately, there's like this hierarchy of things, and prioritize starting at the top, and then everyone else towards the end be damned. I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think it's fair. No, of course not. But it is. This is how these business operates, and it's not just entertainment industry. It's really any multi-million or billionaire corporation or company or platform, industry, whatever. I just think that it really comes down to the people who are okay making this is another topic for another day, but you're making you're making millions and millions of dollars, and then there's people who can't feed themselves or whatever, and they're not getting paid at all. But again, then you value which job is more important, whatever. That again, this is another topic for another day. To answer your question, is the situation fair? I'd say no, but I see why it happens.
Yeah. Brahman, do you feel any differently as someone who works in the entertainment industry, and you still got to get by too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just a little lost here. So the people who made the movie, though, like everyone got paid making that movie. It's not like they're not getting.
No, that's what we're saying, that they are getting paid, but we have, we're in a situation across the country right now where there's millions of people who have lost their jobs from no fault of their own and been told, kind of, well, tough luck. Like, given the situation with everybody in, is it fair that Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins are going to still make away with as much money as if their movie was successful?
But what's to say it's not successful just because it's not having that big box office release? Because it still could be a huge success in terms of people watching it. And I think that it also has to be looked at through the lens of, well, when this movie was in production, like that was a pre-COVID world. When they signed their contracts, that was a pre-COVID world. Right. I think that shifting is going to be happening with like the movies produced like after that. So I don't really see it as completely unfair.
That's fair. Yeah. Hey, that's why we have diverse opinions on the show, and we want to get different perspectives. I thought you might have an interesting perspective on that, or particularly. Should those in the industry, and particularly on this subject, because I was thinking about you this week, when we saw I saw on like on the news there was that woman, and I don't know if you saw it or not, Brahman, but I think she was in California and she was like having her restaurant was being shut down, and then right next to her was a tent like cafeteria for like a movie set that was going on.
I have some about this. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. So my big question is, should the entertainment industry be treated as essential workers? And if I think that it is not a question of if they should be, it's more of a question of at what point are they? Because like if the pandemic goes on for, especially in a situation where we don't know how long this whole thing is going to last, at some point, I feel like you need the orchestra playing on the Titanic. The people on that ship to me had a very essential worker type of vibe. There has to be something that keeps us sane. There has to be something that keeps us connected. And I think that there is a part of that to me is just as essential as maybe a liquor store is. So I think that there is an argument there. But Brahman, I know you got big feelings on this, so lay it on me.
So I saw that video and I was just like rolling my eyes the whole time. I thought it was completely ridiculous. I do not side with her at all because I know the kind of regulations that are in place on sets. If every single person going to a restaurant had to follow the same guidelines that they do at a set, then restaurants could be open. It is insanely strict. You cannot enter the building until you have a negative COVID test that's taken right there. It's not like bring in your test results. It's like we're doing the rapid test. They have the guidelines for the quality of it. They are seriously there are officers there that enforce these rules, and that doesn't happen at a restaurant. So I don't think it could. I don't think that they could be looked at next to each other and compared. I think I
think that's a great point. I mean, I didn't think about the fact that it is on a movie set. It's very much like a place of employment kind of situation that where even more so in places of employment. Because like you think, I don't think that they're testing every single person that walks in and out of a meatpacking plant. Obviously not, right?
No, they're not.
And so it kind of the entertainment industry, because it is so well funded, has the opportunity to probably shell out those tests and still be able to produce stuff. So to kind of root that back to like my original question, should the entertainment industry be treated as essential workers in your opinion, Brahman?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah? Yeah. So. What about you, Jake? Kev? Sorry. So I used to throw it to Jake.
I think when you use the word essential workers, I think in this case, I think as long as what Brian mentioned earlier, I think as long as they're putting all the guidelines in place to make sure that everything is copacetic, if you will, in terms of being COVID safe, then yeah, I think it's fine, dude. Is it necessarily essential? No, but I think being essential means that you don't need to follow those same sort of guidelines. Like you don't need to have a COVID test every day per se, unless it's available to you because you are an essential worker, right? Like think of the people who work at a grocery store. They're not getting tested every day, but they're able to come to work because we need to go to the grocery stores. I don't think the entertainment industry should be treated as essential workers, but if they're able to, like you said, to shovel out the funds in order to make sure everything is COVID safe, then yeah, they should be able to operate as at their discretion.
Yeah, like some kind of a different kind of distinction, like semi-essential or something like that, where you can work if you're going to shell out the money to pay for all the testing and stuff like that.
And I think there's this weird misconception that someone or like the government or somebody is allowing the entertainment industry to like continue operating. They're getting funds and stuff like that. That's not how it's happening. Like these people, they just have money. They're rich, so they can afford to be able to sort of continue to operate. It's not like they're getting something more per se as opposed to someone else. And again, whether or not it's fair, that's another topic for another day. It's just like Bron mentioned, they're actually paying to be able to do this and operate during this pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. The issue here is one more of the rich and their own sense of entitlement? Or does our culture inherently have a toxic relationship with celebrities and the entertainment industry in general? You know, sometimes, you know, some of these situations are a bit hypocritical, you know, especially, you know, like Gal Gadot, Patty Jenkins, you can kind of, for reasons that we discussed earlier, you could probably put them aside in a different situation. But people like Christopher Nolan, people like James Gunn, who are highly, highly successful and are probably doing a lot better than the rest of us. Are the ones that are throwing they're the ones that are throwing the biggest tantrum right now.
Yeah.
You know, is that because of just celebrities and their own entitlement, or is that because we have a toxic relationship with celebrities and entertainment in general?
I think it's a mix of both. I think there's always been this sort of weird idolizing of and fantastical thinking of sort of, you know, celebrities or famous people or historical icons or figures throughout history and pop culture, whatever. But again, and again, I could go on for forever about this. In a nutshell, these people are on these platforms and these pedestals because the public puts them there, right? And you know, like, and people get mad at it, but that's people are choosing who they want to sort of entertain them. Like no one, and it's weird. I don't know how it happens per se. Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes there's some influencing going on, and sometimes it's just, again, it's the popularity. It's the world's biggest popularity contest, and in a way, yes, it can be this sort of, I'd say toxic in a sense where you sort of develop a disassociation with reality in a way, and it works on both sides. And like the average Joe like me, where, you know, we have this weird sort of dissociation with how my life is any different than, like, say, like a Christopher Nolan's, and then like Christopher Nolan's being sort of disillusioned to the fact of what's going on in the world around them. Like yeah, there is a pandemic, and we all have to adjust, right? Like everyone's making adjustments, and I think I would say yes to both sides, right? It's like, yes, there is a toxic relationship with celebrities and entertainment, but also I think there's this sort of entitlement within celebrities, which again we kind of give them in a way, where they feel like they should be able to continue to do any things that they're able to do because they have the resources, money, or whatever, or have been doing it forever. And again, in a way, and I hate to sound kind of cliche and cringy, but we are in a way all in this together, right? Like there's a reason, like you kind of see how fragile this sort of house of cards, which is our civilization, can crumble, right? One thing goes wrong, and then boom, a whole entire industry collapses, like the movie theater industry. So, and I think no one knows what the fuck to do because this is kind of unprecedented for most of us being alive.
For real.
I agree with that completely. And I think that there is this entitlement because there needs to be that attitude of being on the same team because everyone's had to pivot. This is not what anybody this year expected. And I don't think that your movies going to HBO is like the biggest tragedy of 2020. Like you box office releases, like you've had your big blockbuster success, calm down, like a little bit of integrity right now. I think that it's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head, Brian. It's like, it's not like, yes, I'm sorry your movies aren't going to box offices anymore. Like I'm sorry that was the worst thing that happened to you this year.
Right, you know, for real. With all that said, you know, you should be rewarded for your work, especially your art. We also talked about earlier about the creator of Demon Slayer getting swindled out of, you know, a lot of money because he was young, he was a new writer, he didn't know what was going on there. It was kind of reminiscent of, you talk about Dave Chappelle and his fight with Netflix recently, you know. And, you know, directors like Patty Jenkins have a lot on the line going into a movie like Wonder Woman, and the success that she wants there. And, you know, Brahman, I know that you made the point earlier that we don't necessarily know the success of the movie yet, but as far as the box office goes, we do know that it's going to be, by our normal metric, it will likely do a lot worse than the previous ones because it's not releasing in a pandemic. By other metrics, it might be super successful. We don't know. How is this any different than Christopher Nolan and James Gunn's complaints?
How is what every different? Sorry, I got lost in the question.
How are any of the situations where people are kind of like rightfully upset because their work, their art is being, either monetized greatly or usually monetized against their will, and just not cutting their fair share. How is that different than the situations like Christopher Nolan and James Gunn and their complaints?
I just think maybe the parameters surrounding it is what's different. Maybe like people's expectations and intentions going into something. Like with Christopher Nolan and James Gunn, it's like they had this certain expectation of this pre-pandemic world, and now that it's in that post world, it's like they're not able to shift that expectation. And in the sense with what's his name? The
James
film.
Gunn?
No, the writer of Demon Slayer. But anyway,
it's very long and difficult to pronounce.
So in his case, it's kind of like he didn't have that expectation of the amount of success that the film would have, which is what stifled him in the end. So I think it's just people's expectations is kind of what is where I can see that common thread coming. I don't know. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm torn because on one hand, you have a revenue stream essentially being cut entirely. On the other hand, I don't think there's much in the way of money being made at the box office because vaccine or not, COVID is still here and it's still uncertain for how long. Maybe Warner Brothers is looking to capitalize on an inevitable space, i.e. straight to streaming, and that's probably why they went ahead and just did this, right? They're like, we're going to be proactive and innovative. I feel like they're doing what they feel is the best business decision and going into a space that they just see as inevitable. And, anytime there's a disruption, especially when it comes to money, when there's a disruption of the status quo, everyone gets up in arms, i.e. Uber, Airbnb, WeWork, marijuana, electric cars, the list goes on and on. To me, this reminds me very much in a way of the music industry, when Napster came along and went through a shift, essentially where we got to the point today where album sales are pretty much irrelevant. And it makes sense with the ominous accessibility that is the internet that Hollywood would have to shift to.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I think that will about wrap it up for our deep dive segment. We're rolling right along into our top Zen, which is all about cyberpunk because Cyberpunk 2077 is here. So fans have been throwing hours upon hours of their life away at exploring the brand new world and everything it has to offer. And while there's never been a game quite like Cyberpunk 2077, there have been many cyberpunk icons that pave the way for this gaming icon. But first,